Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marina Poljak, and I'm the event coordinator for the Windsor-Essex Regional Chamber of Commerce. We'll begin in just a short moment. Please settle in. We're going to take just a moment to let the rest of the attendees come on board. Thank you for joining us. We will begin in just a second. Before I hand it over to our president and CEO, I just want to let everybody know that if you have any questions or feedback for the chamber, please send them to info@windsoresexchamber.org, or for the latest COVID-19 updates and helpful resources, visit our website. We have a COVID tab as well. You can follow us on social media on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, as well as Instagram, where we post daily updates and what's coming up, new webinars, and webinars that are recorded and that are available for viewing, which are on our YouTube channel as well as on our website. So I will now hand it over to our President and CEO, Rakesh Naidu.
Thanks, Marina, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Business Briefs webinar series. Tomorrow will be the 100 days since WHO declared COVID-19 outbreak as a pandemic. So a milestone day for sure. You know, it seems like it is a lot more. It seems like years has gone by and not just 100 years. So it's not been easy. We know that. It feels as if our world is turned upside down, and the challenges continue. Whether it is because of the border closure, which we all know has been extended till July 21st, or whether it is because of us not successfully moving to stage 2. So the Windsor-Essex region, along with 2 other regions in the province, is still in stage 1. So we understand that is highly frustrating, and we've heard your concerns, we've heard your anxieties about that. Since yesterday, we've had several phone calls and emails from business community urging us to do everything within our means, to change the status. And we clearly get you. We understand that every day is a long day, and that we need to open up as soon as possible. So, it's not easy, and we surely can't give up. We've done all the good work since, several weeks, 13, 14 weeks now. And because of all the hard work that's been done collaboratively with all levels of government, we are here today, and we've made a huge level of progress. So let us continue what we need to do, to ensure that we do everything that's possible so that we can reopen as soon as we're given the green light. And let's prepare ourselves for that. So to that effect, there are several support programs, tools, resources that are being made available. You've heard of that. We've sent information in this region, the province, the feds. They have a lot of really good tools, and all 3 levels of government have been working in a very coordinated manner. The province itself has yesterday, the Premier and Minister Vic Fedeli, they announced a few more tools, few more sector-specific guidelines that is now going to be made available. And then there's a plethora of programs and assistance and incentives that have been identified. And our special guest today, Minister Vic Fedeli, he's been very instrumental in developing these programs and policies that are geared towards helping the business community. And Minister Vic Fedeli, who is the Minister for Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, he's not a stranger to the Windsor-Essex area. Many of you have met him, many of you have interacted him and have seen him. And you can see him always very busy and active, whether it's the conferences that the Premier is doing, or whether his own announcements, that are geared towards the business community. And he's a very strong supporter of the business community, as we all know, and very strong supporter of the core industry that we have here, which is manufacturing and the auto industry. And we, I think, have the right person leading this portfolio, leading this ministry, because he's someone that gets the business world. He himself has been an entrepreneur, and a very successful entrepreneur. At the age of 20, or in his early 20s, he started an advertising company called Fedeli Advertising, which ended up becoming a very successful company, became a global company, and it operated from Ontario, but he had operations all over the world. So he has the experience of taking a startup, a small business, and making it very successful. So someone that understands the business needs, the concerns, and someone that actually knows how it is, to go through a time when there is really no business, there is no revenue coming in, and when there is high level of debts, So someone that actually knows it because he's been a business owner, and in him we have a very strong ally who actually can represent the business community very well. So in 1992, after he started this company and became very successful, he sold that company. And then for the next 11 years, he devoted his life to running 3 very successful not-for-profit organizations. And in 2003, he ran for the mayor of North Bay and won by huge margin. And that got re-elected again in 2008. And that was another landslide victory. In 2011, he stepped away from the mayor's position after serving 2 terms, and then he was elected to serve the people of Nipissing in that was the first time at Queen's Park. And then again in 2014, he was re-elected as MPP, and he served as energy and finance critic in the official opposition's shadow cabinet. And in 2018, he was re-elected and appointed as Ontario's finance minister that many of us know. Had a great run at that, was very successful finance minister. And he also chaired the cabinet, which was headed by Premier Doug Ford. In 2019, he was named as the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. And I think he really fit into this role very well, with his experience of being the finance minister and then moving on to this portfolio of economic development. I think that was a great transition, and I think it worked really well because he has the experience of being a finance minister, knowing what it is needed by the industry and by the business community, and then coming on as the minister to implement a lot of good things for the business community. So, we are very fortunate that he's here with us. Usually you would see him at 1 o'clock, business briefs or conferences that the Premier hosts. And he's a very busy man, but he has very kindly agreed to give us his time today to come and talk to us, listen to us, share insights and information on what's happening. So we're very grateful to you, Minister. Thank you for being here today.
Well, Rakesh, thank you very much. That was a very generous introduction, so I want to say thank you very, very kindly. And I bring you personal greetings from our President and CEO of the North Bay and District Chamber of Commerce, Peter Chirko. He is very pleased with all of the great work that you're doing to support the business community in Windsor-Essex and the entire region. So congratulations. And on a personal note, I want to say thanks to you, Rakesh, for your guidance and help with Tesla. You've been a very good friend to the province of Ontario with your thoughtful contributions on Tesla. So thank you. Marina, thank you for the setup. And I want to say to welcome to all of the Windsor-Essex business community who are at the virtual roundtable today. It's a great talk with fellow business people. As Rakesh mentioned, Premier Ford and I are lifelong entrepreneurs. We're business people first. There's nothing we won't do for the business community that's within our hands. And I think you know that. I think you've seen that from us over the years. But I want to say thank you to all of you. Especially in your neck of the woods, you've really gone above and beyond in terms of contribution for the COVID-19 pandemic. Many businesses, large and small, have retooled their operations to produce personal protective equipment, emergency supplies, and other PPE. The Windsor-Essex Economic Development Corporation surveyed 52 Windsor-Essex companies, and 60% of them expressed interest or were currently involved in COVID-19 related projects. So that's a very, very strong number of companies who stepped up. And, I think when there was call to arms, if you will. We really saw a strong Ontario spirit coming from Windsor-Essex. So you should be very proud of the community. And I'm going to mention a few, I think 4 companies, very specifically in Windsor-Essex area that have developed very innovative ideas and solutions for COVID-19. The first is Cavalier Tool and Manufacturing. They're now working on building parts for hand sanitizer dispensers, and they're part of the Canadian Manufacturers #StepUp campaign. So congratulations. And Windsor Mold, they retooled their production to be able to manufacture over 2 million face shields and thousands of headbands as part of an agreement. So it's just wonderful activity to see there. Harbour Technologies, in partnership with BC's Novo Technologies, will build Canada's first automated N95 and medical gown production line, one in BC and one in Windsor, to become the largest manufacturer of PPE. Congratulations, and proud of the region for this. Vista Solutions has created a thermal screening system to allow businesses to have temperature screening of employees and visitors to visit facilities and establishments. So this is the kind of creative thinking that will drive innovation, something that Windsor is so well known for. It's going to create jobs, and it's going to help Ontario build our economy. So congratulations. I think they represent, and the Premier agrees, this is the best of the spirit of Ontario, and it's coming right out of Windsor-Essex business community. So great leadership, Rakesh, great teamwork. We're moving forward with a plan to rebuild the economy with 3 fundamental objectives. First is to spur economic recovery, which will restore consumer demand. Second is to build on our progress to make Ontario a cost-effective and streamlined location for business. And the third is to work across industry sectors to succeed in a post-COVID world. So you've seen the things we've done. We can talk more in detail if you'd like. You've seen the things we've done in Ontario. We implemented the COVID-19 action plan. That is $17 billion of support, 3.3 billion for families and jobs, 3.7 billion for health, and $10 billion in provincial tax deferrals, WSIB premium deferrals, other business supports that are out there. We've deferred a portion of the global adjustment charges, that's electricity charges for Class A and B industrial. Most of you know exactly what we're talking about. We've deferred commercial electricity consumer rates for a 3-month period starting in April. So we've got a tremendous amount of money on the table, $17 billion, and that's the beginning, just the start. There's more supports coming. We put a $50 million Ontario Together fund, and that's to help businesses retool or manufacture the PPE that we talked about. Just finished announcing another company on Monday. I was in Oakville announcing the CSA group with the latest of the Ontario Together fund. We put together the Ontario Together portal, and we've had 26,000 submissions. 17,000 of those submissions led to $610 million in purchases that we've made of critical supplies. It's like 123 million masks, 4 million face shields, 168 million gloves, 21 million gowns, and our supports continue. We consolidated all of the information that are the resources for business at ontario.ca, support for business. So you can go on that website. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 different websites. They all start with ontario.ca/something. You can, for the Ontario Together and the Ontario Together Fund, it's ontario.ca/Ontario Together. We've been tackling the barriers to business online. We have a portal there as well. And this is where we talk to you about red tape and burden reduction. We have a workplace supplier PPE directory. You can go on to ontario.ca/PPE, and this is several hundred companies across Ontario that supply you with PPE and will ship to your door. Many of them are made in Ontario. You'll see the Ontario icon beside their name. And we've got something of interest to you as business people. We've implemented a new regulatory amendment. It's non-unionized employees on what we call infectious disease emergency leave. And that's anytime their hours of work are temporarily reduced by you, the employer, because of COVID-19. And that's to ensure that businesses aren't forced to terminate employees after the Employee Standards Act, the layoff period expires. So that's something that you asked for. You, Chambers of Commerce, asked for that, and Premier Ford and our cabinet, our caucus, have delivered that. And another one is you want guidelines. You want to know when we do get to open, and that will come soon, Rakesh. Your introductory comments were not lost to me. It won't be the elephant in the room. We'll talk about that. When you are allowed to open, there will be 130 safety guidelines. These are sector by sector guidelines that have been published on the Ontario.ca website as well. So you'll know exactly what's required of the facilities when they open. And you know, the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance, that's in partnership with the federal government. We're putting up $241 million out of the province of Ontario for commercial landlords and small businesses in support of rental assistance for the small business community. So well, that's kind of in a nutshell, although I'm sure there are questions and comments. We've also really relied heavily on testing. So if you want to know what's next, it's really going to be all about testing. We released the next phase of our testing plan, and that expands testing for the general public, frontline workers, first responders, and workplaces. I know in North Bay, which is my hometown, I drove to our hospital, pulled into the assessment center. You don't need to have any symptoms, any reason. You should become part of those data that we need to make decisions. And I was tested, negative by the way, but I was tested, and you're in and out in minutes, and you know, it's a painless Q-tip, and become part of the important data that we need to make decisions. So we are, I'll close by saying we are seeking more input through our ministerial advisory councils and these kinds of video teleconferences. Rakesh has been a very integral part of this, individually and through the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, which represents you on a different, on different days with other organizations. These are very important. We do this all day, every day. We have many, many, many video conferences with stakeholders, so we get real feel on the ground what's happening in this sector and this sector. So we're speaking with knowledge that you know, you can't put a price on that. That's why we spend so much time on these video conferences as we work on our road to recovery, and we're doing it together. It's not going to be simple. It's not going to flick a switch and we're back on. We continue to work with business. We're going to get Ontario's economy back on track. You know, the Premier likes to talk about, we have the best, brightest, most innovative people in the world. Certainly the auto sector has shown that with great leadership, and all of the parts manufacturers, all the tool and die and mold makers, all the supports for the OEMs as well. It's a huge infrastructure in Ontario, and you know, we want to leverage all of this advantage to prepare for the future. So I think today's will be an ideal venue, but I wanted to take a few minutes just in case there were any holes or misunderstandings in what we're doing. I really wanted to have that opportunity, Rakesh, to very detailed, explain what the province of Ontario has been doing for the business community. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for those remarks. You know, you're absolutely right. The province has really stepped up. There is a lot of really very wonderful programs that you offered, and the business community has been very grateful and have received that very well. Clearly, you know, without that support, you know, the business community would have been in a very difficult position. So all of that you do, along with your colleagues at Queen's Park, you know, we really appreciate that and thank you for that. However, it's not yet done, and you touched upon that, and stage 2 recovery is a big concern here, and I'm going to bring it out and let you talk a bit about that, because that's something that is of great concern for our businesses here, for the whole community. And you mentioned about all these wonderful programs, and that's great. But these programs will really be very useful and will help us only if we are allowed to reopen, right? And that reopening is critical, not just in terms of, the ability for us to do business, but also about the timeline for reopening is equally important and concerning for us. So can you speak a little bit about that as to where do you see and what do you see in terms of the next step towards reopening?
Well, getting to stage 2 is a very important piece of the reopening. There are most of Ontario, outside of Toronto, Peel, and Windsor-Essex, as you know, are into a stage 2. It is all entirely dependent on the discussions with the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario. It's not a choice of do we want to or not. Of course we want to. The Premier wants everything open as soon as possible. And the soonest possible metrics is the Chief Medical Officer of Health. And right now, with the outbreak in the agricultural sector, it has made it impossible for Windsor-Essex to have opened into stage 2 yet. But the Premier is very hopeful that this will come soon. I can't give you a date. I won't even hint at a date. I know the Premier likes to talk about this, but he won't give you a date either. We are waiting for the Chief Medical Officer to present the science of the region at the command table. And the moment, the second that we're able to open, we'll announce stage 2. So that you're not caught off guard, think about it, prepare. I'm not giving you any hint as to the date. I don't know it, the Premier doesn't know it, we don't know it. Science isn't out yet to tell us to open. So that you're not caught off guard, be prepared. Go on the website, ontario.ca/PPE, order the PPE that you're going to need. If you want to know what it is that you're going to need, go on ontario.ca/coronavirus. Go down a few links and you'll see the Ministry of Labour sector by sector guidelines. Go into those guidelines, look up your sector, understand what the regulations and the guidelines will be for your type of business, and get ready for it so that when the announcement is made, you can seamlessly roll into stage 2. That's what my best advice, Rakesh, would be.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, you mentioned about the importance of advanced manufacturing and how several of our companies here have retooled and have been very instrumental in providing support during this time. That is what this region is made up of. Several companies that are innovative, that are some of the best in the world. In manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, auto industry, that's the backbone of our economy here. And I would say that that's true for whole of Ontario. This whole belt from Windsor-Essex all the way till Oshawa, even I would say Peterborough, that's such an important belt for the province. And this sector of advanced manufacturing, as you know, has been hit very strongly. What do you think could be some of the support that your government can come up with and provide to the advanced manufacturing sector, specifically also to the auto industry? And is there some kind of relief that you're thinking of proposing a package? We saw that in 2008 when we went through a similar situation, that it was the sector-specific support that was developed at that time that actually ended up helping quite a bit. And supply chain disruption was, to some extent, it was mitigated. So what are your thoughts on how auto industry and manufacturing sector can be supported at this time?
There are really, thank you, Rakesh. Great question, of course, especially for Windsor-Essex. So there are really 3 areas that we should be looking at. The first is our entire automotive strategy program. Driving Prosperity is the name. So if you want to Google Ontario Driving Prosperity, you'll get the full understanding, the full package, where there are some financial supports. But really the automotive sector, very shortly, NAFTA 2.0 is going to kick in. And in the rules of origin section, the parts that are needed for by the OEMs is going to change in North America from 62.5% being North American made to 70%. And that will happen for a period of only 3 years. So the window is opened right now for us in Ontario, the parts manufacturers and all the suppliers, Hyundai, mold makers, and the OEM to all start talking, what can we make in Ontario? A lot of parts that are made offshore will not be, well, eligible. We'll go from 62.5% to 70% must be made in North America. And that means Ontario, hopefully, nearby our plants here or nearby the US plants, or just in time. It means Mexico, and it means the US as well. We've got a great opportunity here for us to hone in on parts that are not made in Ontario yet, could be added. So that is, you're going to see us focusing on that very, very, very sharply. I had one of these types of calls from my home in Corbeil yesterday with the auto parts groups, and you know, I asked them, do you share my excitement about getting into this expansion of parts? And to a person, they did. They understood, and they've guided us on this change. So that's number one. This is going to be huge. You will see us laser focused on this NAFTA 2.0 auto parts rules of origin. I won't give you any more details because, you know, it's very, very detailed about what specifically that means. But you will see us spend an inordinate amount of time on this. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make big leaps. Second, I want to encourage members to go on the Southwestern Development Fund. We call it SWATF for short. There are a huge amount of Windsor-Essex companies who have successfully applied for SWATF grants and loans. And we've made announcement after announcement in the Windsor-Essex area. We converted that program in November. I went to Woodstock and relaunched it. You now get a 60 business day guarantee for a decision. So again, you can Google Southwestern Development Fund Ontario and look at the application. We got set now. There's 4 intakes. There's a specific date and a specific date for the investments to be made within 60 business days. So this is a very, very business-like approach to this fund that's existed for a while. So that's the second one. And the third one, of course, is the Ontario Together Fund that I spoke of earlier. $50 million. Only a couple of weeks ago, we awarded the first one, Virox Technologies in Oakville, and they now make a hand sanitizer wipe, a sanitized wipe in Oakville. Then we announced 3 more, mostly face shields and an oxygen mask in Barrie, face shields in Concord, and face shields in Pembroke. And then just Monday, as I said, I was in Oakville at Canadian Standards Association on a new certification program. So there's very few that have been awarded so far. So consider if you're retooling, you want to get into the manufacturing of masks, gowns, all of the PPE. You know, we've got 20,000 manufacturing firms in Ontario, 700,000 employees. It's about 10% of our workforce in Ontario are in the important manufacturing sectors: automotive, aerospace, chemicals, steel, life sciences. So we really want to see you make those applications. That's a long answer, Rakesh, for a short question, but I think this was one of the more detailed areas that I think we wanted to go down.
No, thank you, Minister. And I want to commend you and your ministry for that laser focus in terms of the delivery time that you have, 60 days and you get an answer. I think that's something which is really very good. That's how the industry wants. They want to see a definite timeline for response so that, they're not waiting forever to get a decision. So I commend you for doing that. And Minister, you mentioned about the opportunity in supply chain because of USMCA, and we pointed out that there are parts that are not yet being built here in Ontario, and we have an opportunity to build them here. So currently these parts are coming from far off places, offshore locations, supply chain that is, stretched into every corner of the world. And we've seen that the supply chain has been disrupted, and that's creating issues with our manufacturing companies to open up, whether it's tier one or OEMs. They all rely on supply chain that is, as I mentioned, throughout the world. So one is that aspect of disruption in supply chain, which is creating pain within the industry. And then there is the whole aspect which is tied to supply chain, which is the just-in-time manufacturing, which we are very used to, and which helps us with the efficiencies in manufacturing. And that's been also something that's been disrupted, linked with supply chain disruption. What do you think the government can do to help companies that are battling these dual issues of not being able to use efficiencies because of just-in-time manufacturing issues and also supply chain disruption?
Well, that's a great question. My answer, Rakesh, is going to be more in the form of a question. We've got our Jobs and Recovery Committee. We meet frequently. All of these teleconferences that we have gather the information that we've learned. This one today is more of an answering one than a receiving of information, but we need to hear from you, your chamber members, on what you think we should be doing about the supply chain. I'll tell you what I told a company that I visited this week. I'm looking at their manufacturing line, and they were taking components and people were dropping pieces in to a package, and then the package gets sealed and shipped out. I asked, oh, that one component, where's that made? It was made in India. Where's that piece made? That one was made in China. And I said to them, there's a lot of injection molders in Ontario. Surely to God, we can be making that piece here in Ontario. You won't be relying. We have 3,000 SKUs, 3,000, several thousand of them, or a majority of them, I should say, come from outside of Ontario. And, you've heard the Premier. We will, I'll talk about PPE first and then more generically. We will not be caught again beholden to somebody else to supply our components in PPE. For a short while, we were alarmed with what we were hearing globally about we're keeping it for ourselves, we're not going to share it. And Premier said, never again. That's why we put a $50 million fund in place. Never again are we going to be caught short of PPE. So we're making it here in Ontario, for Canada, and for export. So take that model. Now, I'll tell you, his next one was pharmaceutical. We don't make pharmaceuticals in Ontario that we used to make. So we're asking these mega companies, what would it take for you to add 1 million square feet or 500,000 square feet? What is it going to take? By the way, it's not always about price. A lot of pharmaceuticals are robotically created and robotically put together. It's not a lot of people. It's a big investment, mind you. It's red tape and regulation. We hear that every single day. And so the Premier has said, and to answer your question, what are we going to do? We're going to cut red tape. We're going to cut regulation, but we need to hear from you. What is in your way? What's holding you up? Tell us exactly, specifically. We've got a red tape bill coming this spring/summer, I guess now. We'll have another one in the fall. We promised 2 a year. So while this one is being pretty much finalized now, tell us what you want in that in the fall red tape, right down to specifics. I can't do this because X is in the way. If you were to move Y and Z, I can expand. You need to tell us exactly what you need. Whether it's a municipal issue, a provincial issue, or a federal issue, we'll go to bat for you. We'll fight hard for you on all of these areas. If it's a provincial issue, we have a lot more control, of course. And we've got a lot of tools in our tool chest. Municipal zoning orders, and we're not afraid to use them. If this is going to help business expand. The Premier stood up in front when we did our stand-up on Monday at 1 o'clock, and he said, municipalities, get with the program. Let's get going here. And we can't have anybody in the way of expanding businesses. So your direct answer about combating the issue of these parts coming in, we want you to make more here, and we'll help you if you can replace parts that are being brought in. NAFTA 2.0 is going to help us do that. We'll help with the red tape and regulation. And we've got some funds, the SWATF and the others. It's all laid out here for us. So we need you as the business community to take advantage of these opportunities.
Yeah, thank you, Minister. And you know, you asked as to what does the business community need, what support you need. Clearly, you know, reducing you know, red tape and working so that we have regulations that make sense and there is no overburden on the industries is vital. To that, you know, I think one thing that, you know, the business community, especially the manufacturing community, would benefit from is reassessing and looking at, you know, the cost of doing business in Ontario, and that there's clearly room there for us to improve. And as you know, that, you know, our the cost of energy is still high, and that becomes a deterrent, you know, to bring in more business here, whether it's new business or whether it's expansion of companies. So we really urge you to take a look at that, because that is still adding significantly to the cost of doing business on the manufacturing side. If I may also take this opportunity to talk about another sector which is of importance here to us, which is, you know, the winery industry. You know, the industry is doing well, but we've, you know, that industry has cost that is added to the overall unit price because of the taxation, and there is duties that the industry is paying, such as, you know, import duties of 35%, and then the retail sales tax on top of that, which adds to the cost and makes them less competitive with, you know, the import brands. So that's something that we would urge you to take a look at as well, and that would go a long way in making our winery industry in Ontario more competitive. So just some thoughts from us, you know, for you to consider. But I want to come back to you know, the opportunity in the supply chain. You know, because of the disruption, clearly the cost is going up, right? And if you can't bring parts in time, or if you cannot make them close by, and if there's a delay, you know, all of that adds to the cost. You know, plant closures and all of that, right? So during this time, it is becoming more magnified, this challenge. So there is that cost, the additional cost, and the reopening issues. And then there's also the cost of compliance, you know, to the health and safety guidelines, you know, whether that is cleaning, you know, the floors, sanitizing, PPEs, you know, and you name it, right? That is, there is a time factor to it, which is an additional time that takes, you know, from productive use of time for manufacturing, but also it adds cost to the operation. And many companies have low volume of business at this time. So as the business volume hasn't come up, and it's not likely to come up very soon, anytime soon. And on top of that, there is the additional cost of compliance. What can we do to help our companies? Because for many sectors, small businesses, you know, this is not sustainable. Is there something that can be done? I know you've got really good programs that are providing support, but helping the companies as they reopen and giving them the support that they need to be sustainable as they reopen would be vital. Can you share anything on that, Minister?
I have a couple of thoughts on this. The first one, I just want to throw a thought back on the wine industry. And I wrote down here about your taxation and duties, and I will continue to speak to our cabinet about the wine sector. They're very well represented by our caucus. They speak loud and clear at our caucus meetings about the all beverage alcohol. I'm going to say something, and I'll probably get in trouble, as I usually do when I broach this topic. In the future, we're going to come out of this together, but we're going to work. You know, don't forget, I'm the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation, and Trade. I'm going to speak just briefly about trade, and then I'll get back to the direct answer to your question. Trade isn't just, you know, what we're doing like our last trip to India. This is not always what trade is. I'm going to start with interprovincial trade. You know, we leave, Chamber of Commerce have taught us, we leave $40 billion a year on the table, all of us provinces, by not trading together properly. It's unbelievable. There's so many restrictions and so much red tape, and there's so many carve-outs and hesitancy by all these sectors who want more, but don't touch my side of it. You know, you can, you know, I want to be able to do all these things, but leave me alone. You know, we're in this or we're not. So I asked the Premier one day, at the end of 2019, Premier Ford, are we free traders? The answer was yes. And I said, all right, we're going to see a very strong push towards interprovincial trade, true interprovincial trade, no carve-outs, no lobbyists that are going to say, well, yeah, that's great, except don't touch my industry. And, you know, one of the last days, it was in March of 2020, just before COVID was within Canada, travel was really curtailed. I had a dinner set up with one of the premiers of another province who's also a big free trader. And he said, Vic, you and I are going to lead the way on this. Let's go. You have your Premier Doug Ford's permission. He sent you as his soldier to do this. Let's you and I get together and advance Premier Ford and this other Premier's ideas, true interprovincial free trade. You know, you can't drive a tractor trailer from coast to coast very easy. Each province has different tire pressure. Each province has different requirements for what goes inside a first aid kit. I mean, this is ridiculous. But the wine industry cannot be afraid of BC wine coming into Ontario. Think better. Think all the wine you can be exporting to the other provinces. We've got to stop this historical way of doing things and look positively. BC is not going to ship $12 bottles of wine here to Ontario. They're not going to. It's not worth it. So think of what you can be doing in Ontario and shipping coast to coast. It'll be spectacular if we truly are free traders. So you're going to see a big push once the pandemic settles and we can get some other aspects of the business started. Rakesh, you're going to see a big push on interprovincial trade, a big push on north-south border trade, primarily because of NAFTA 2.0. You know, we're the largest trading partner to 19 US states and the second largest to 9 more. You're going to see us push for, because NAFTA is here now and there's no Buy America nationally, you're going to see us push on subnational levels. We were meeting with 5 different US states just before COVID hit. The Premier and I were in Washington, we were in Texas in the same week doing subnational deals with other provinces, with other states, I should say, so that we can have free trade between province and state as well. We were so close on that with 5 of them. So we're going to start that. And then our international trade, you're going to see us with a huge push, all digitally. We had a trade show with California in the bio sector just last week. Before that was a couple hundred companies in India. We were doing these meetings. So this is, you're going to see a real push towards, we're waiting for the analysis of the bio show. It's still on this week, by the way, the bio show. It's all done virtually. We're going to look at the analysis and look at what we can do to tweak it, and you may see a bigger push. So you are going to see interprovincial trade, US Canada, US Ontario trade, and national trade. We got to have all the sectors in it. They can't be looking for a carve out and be excluded and live life the way they are today, except for having things added to it. There'll be some balance. That's the one that'll get me in trouble, but that's what we do, because it's going to be the way I'm approaching this. When we talk about how the manufacturing can recover and how businesses can manage this loss, you know, what you're going to see from us in terms of bringing the costs down in Ontario, same as before. Nothing changed. Nothing's changed from 2018 when we were elected to the end of 2019. We saw 307,000 jobs created in Ontario. Don't forget, in the middle of March, before COVID hit, our biggest issue, Windsor as well, Windsor-Essex as well, can't find people to fill the jobs. We had 250,000 jobs that went unfilled in Ontario. Why? Because we cut $5 billion out of the cost of doing business. All that is still in place. It's going to be $5.4 billion this year. That is $2.2 billion. We reduced the cost of WSIB in Ontario. This is all pre-COVID. Almost $1 billion was an accelerated capital cost allowance. We reduced costs in all aspects where Ontario has control, and reducing red tape. We had more than $300 million in the cost of red tape has been reduced. So when you ask, what are we going to do? More of the same. More of those areas that we have direct control over. Yes, there's some COVID packages that will come and go. All of that, $5+ billion of savings, it's all still in place. Again, another long answer, sorry.
No, I think that's, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for addressing the interprovincial trade. You know, I mean, this region, Windsor-Essex, thrives on trade, and many of our companies do trade or more trade with US, then they're able to do trade with some of the other provinces in Canada. And I don't think that's a good thing for us. So thanks for looking into that, because clearly that's something which you would have heard, is the chamber network has been bringing up quite a bit, that we need to address that. So thank you for putting attention to that. I want to talk a bit about, the SME sector, Minister. This sector that employs the highest number of people in Canada, that contributes, over 60% to the GDP. It's a huge sector, diversified, but a very important sector. And that sector is going through quite a bit of pain during this time. Quite a few challenges, different challenges. Each sector has its own thing. I think there is a need for this sector to get some additional help and get some respite from the challenges which has come with because of them having to close down completely, the increased debt level, the cost of compliance, and so on. What is your government doing to help the SME sector specifically?
Well, Rakesh, a couple of areas. I would go back first to the $17 billion that we put in place right immediately. I mean, there was the reaction and the recovery, the reopening, which is happening, and then the recovery. But that reaction was $17 billion that was put in place. And so we know that easing the burdens on people, that's what's going to help the communities and our businesses thrive. And so we have saved them money in other areas, wherever we can save them money to ease their burden. I mean, we can't directly ease their business burden, but we can ease the financial burdens in other areas that are within a government control. So I know they found their tax obligations to be a challenge, and that's why we provided flexibility to Ontario companies with respect to their taxes being deferred from April to August 31st, interest-free, penalty-free for those who can't file. And that's going to free up about $6 billion in cash flow for about 100,000 businesses. When you look at the other areas, the employee health tax is another one. We made exemptions in 2020. That's about 57,000 private sector employers are going to pay less employee health tax, EHT, in 2020. And that includes about 30,000 more who won't pay any EHT this year. That's about $355 million. And there's many other programs that are in there. One that is more localized would be the investment of our government of about $2 million to open the Virtual Action Center. It's in partnership with Unite Here Local 75. And this is a virtual job training resource, and that provide up to 7,000 unemployed workers in the hospitality sector with access to a wide range of services and support they can get over the phone. So there are many pieces, whether it's in tourism or whether it's in manufacturing. Everything I've talked about in the last 50 minutes is really all about the supports that we have for government. It only came because we listened to you. You told us what you needed. Where we could, we put it in place. We're working with the feds. You've noticed there's no politics being played anywhere. We know what needs to be done, and we want to make sure there's no gaps. So we consult with the feds. Either you do it or we do it. There's no gaps and no duplication. And so we've been working very well together, making sure that supports are available to SMEs, to the tourism sector, to any of the sectors that we've spoken about so far on this call.
Thank you, Minister. There's quite a few questions that are coming. If you don't mind, can I take some from the attendees here as well?
We can try.
Thank you. This is from Robert Cattle from CTMA, the Canadian Tooling and Machining Association. And he says, as we all know, the auto industry has been significantly hit with the COVID crisis. Many tool and mold companies are expecting program delays and possible cancellations. We thank you for all the programs that you've put in place to help industry, but moving forward, cash liquidity will become an increasing problem. Could you share some of your thoughts on possible tax breaks for companies to help them through these difficult times?
Thank you, Robert. So my quick answer will be no, I can't. And the reason is, again, now we're going to convert this to, I need to hear from you. So what I'm hearing from you, I will take to the Jobs and Recovery Committee. We'll be meeting Friday morning again at 8 o'clock. And there's a dozen and a half, I think, cabinet ministers that serve on this, and I will take cash liquidity as an issue to put it on the agenda as part of our package. So I don't have an instant answer for you, so no, I can't tell you. What I can tell you is I'll bring this to our table, just like all the other input that we've received from Rakesh and others, and we'll put this on the table for a discussion. Because the Premier said when we came up with the $17 billion was our reaction, a very quick reaction to COVID-19. But that was only our starting chip. You'll hear more. We need to know what it is you need. And now I'm hearing from you, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. This is from Ed Bernard, who also is with the Canadian Association of Mold Makers. And he says, many advanced manufacturers in Ontario begin pivoting their production capabilities early to develop COVID-19 related products, only to discover that their investment do not align with government priorities at the moment, and that there are no existing methods for these cost recoveries. Can these companies be recognized as the innovative businesses that are best poised to pivot in the future to ensure that the same altruistic spirit does not become discouraged? In our advanced manufacturing digitized sector, we need not stockpile goods. If we have a database identifying which advanced manufacturing business are best positioned to pivot and to what purpose, this pivot capability database could be mobilized when required without the redundant efforts that we recently witnessed.
Thanks, Ed. I'm just making some notes here. So I'm not sure what became redundant. We've said right from day one, we need masks, gowns, gloves, face shields, and sanitizer, those 5 products. Today, we need masks, gowns, gloves, face shields, and hand sanitizer. We still need the same 5 things. So I'm just not entirely sure. I'm maybe misunderstanding, Ed, the nuance of the questions. But this concept of a pivot database, that's interesting. If you could send us a little bit of information about what you mean by that. My direct email is victor.fedeli, that's spelled F as in Frank, E-D-E-L-I, victor.fedeli@ontario.ca, and I can forward it on to my team. I would be delighted to hear a little bit more about the nuance of a pivot database. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Minister. And Minister, one of the challenge that a lot of businesses, especially those that are renting, are facing is, the challenge with the uptake on the commercial rent relief program. As you know, that there's been a very low uptake for many reasons. Complexity of a program is often cited as that. We often hear that. I was talking with one of our members here. It's a large organization that has 165 tenants in a mall setting. And, if they have to offer this, they have to offer it to all tenants so that they're fair. And that complexity of preparing 165 different, agreements and going through that is very cumbersome. So that is discouraging them and many others, to use the program. And on top of that, there is also a very steep eligibility criteria currently, which is, 70% reduction in business volume. Is it something that we can look into where the eligibility criteria is lowered so that many more can partake into this? And also if the process can be made simpler so that a lot more companies, and even those that are smaller organizations that don't necessarily have a very elaborate HR or administrative function and departments can still use this program.
Thank you. What I would say about that program is, hear you. We heard earlier that this federal program, federally designed program, isn't quite meeting things. So, at one point, they had to have a mortgage. Now we were able to bring, because of calls like this, we're able to bring that. Some companies don't have a mortgage on their building, but they still have tenants and they'd like to be part of it. So that was changed. And there's a few other nuances that have been changed along the way. You mentioned that it's either complex or discouraging, and we will continue to talk to the federal government about making the program more user-friendly, more appropriate fitting for businesses? Because we hear you. We hear what these issues are. This isn't the first time the federal government will be instructed that there are issues with this program. I can tell you from our side, of course, we've made it retroactive. We're going to continue to make any refinements that we can will help. You can see we ourselves, since the feds asked us to put 241 million into it as a share, you can see we've made changes twice already, and we'll continue to do that. But the Premier has said more than once, the landlords, the banks, work with these tenants. You know, again, I likely get myself in trouble when I talk like this, but I'm a business guy, lifelong business person. You know, these landlords, like, you've got a tenant. They've been there for a while. Worked with them for years. Work it out together. You know, this is an area the Premier is going to be very insistent. He said, you know, I'll be like an 800-pound gorilla on your back. And I think he means it. Again, a lifelong entrepreneur. So we're encouraging the landlord, work with the tenants. We'll make changes that we can make as we have in the past, and we've encouraged the feds to do in the past. And we'll just continue to hear from you as we refine this to see that it works.
Thank you, Minister. This is about WSIB. The question is from Jonathan Azzopardi, you know, whom you know, owner of Laval Tool and also on board of CAM. And he asks about, you know, how are you dealing with WSIB claims now and also in the future, and how that will relate to COVID-19 absenteeism?
So I'm not familiar that WSIB has changed much other than deferring WSIB payments, I think, till August 31st, so I'm going by memory. You know, over the course of 18 months, as you know, I've said before, we've reduced the cost of WSIB by 47%. Now the payments are deferred. I'm not entirely sure that there's something different that we do with WSIB. Well, I've mentioned that with terminations, we've moved that or made it a new piece of legislation so that the employees aren't terminated. So that this is non-union employees, so they can be brought back. So I'm not entirely sure that we've done anything different with WSIB claims. That's independent. They have justifiable claims. They handle them. I don't think I've answered this question, but I'm not sure that I know any more about WSIB to answer.
Okay. All right, Minister, thanks. And we're getting close to 2 o'clock, and I know you've got several meetings, so we don't want to keep you here for too long. But I want to sincerely thank you for making time for this, for taking all the questions. A lot of these questions came to us from our members from the business community beforehand. So we appreciate you taking time to address each one of those. And I also want to give a shout out to your staff, Rahul Bedi, your Chief of Staff, great to work with, Faith, who's been great, Nancy Creighton, who's your representative in our region, fantastic to deal with. She makes a huge difference to this community and is a great partner here. So, you know, it's been wonderful to work with your team, wonderful to work with you, and thank you for your leadership and for everything that you're doing. I know it's not easy time, and you have not, you know, dipped in energy at all. Every time I see you, you're the same, you know, bubbling with energy and enthusiasm. And thank you for that, because we need it. And thank you for everything that you're doing for the business community. And the last thing I will say is that Windsor-Essex is looking forward to being in stage 2. So we are hoping that, you know, we'll get everyone's support to make that happen.
Excellent. Thank you for your leadership. You have a great Chamber of Commerce for your whole area. We appreciate that. Faith is sitting right over here, so she's giving a Yahoo. She got a shout out, and I'll pass your comments on to the entire team we have, led by our Chief of Staff Rahul here in Toronto, and we're looking forward to coming out of this together. The Premier has said many, many times we're going to come out of this bigger, better, stronger than we were when we went into it. And that is going to be one hell of a great Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And to everyone that's here today attending this seminar, thank you for your time. We continue to bring you this important conversations with key individuals. Tomorrow at 2:30, we will be talking about the real estate industry and the changes there in terms of incorporation and how that can benefit realtors. So come back and be part of that. And tomorrow it's at 2:30. So with that, I thank everyone. Minister, thank you again so much and wish you the best. Take care, everyone.